Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Tuesday, June 16th, 2020. This is your daily Buckeye fix from BuckeyeScoop.com. I'm Tom Orr. Today I'm joined by Tony Gerdeman. He's the lead beat writer for BuckeyeScoop.com. Tony, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me, Tom.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you. Tony is here to talk a little bit about, I think, a little bit of a surprise. I don't know if controversy is the right word, but there was a little bit of blowback this week on Ohio State issuing like a release, kind of, not quite a legal release. It was framed as a Buckeye acknowledgement and pledge, basically to have players acknowledge, yes, COVID-19 is a thing that is going on right now, and yes, I understand that there are certain steps I'm supposed to be taking before I come back on campus. Tony, can you share a little bit about what was in that pledge and whether there was anything that seemed real unusual to you in there?
A lot of what it is what Gene Smith had already told us about what the players were going to have to do, part of the education process, the self-education process of getting back into the workouts and getting back into the buildings. Like, you're going to have to understand all of this. And that's what a lot of this is. It's just having the players check their temperatures, and if they have sore throat, if they have headaches, let somebody know. And a lot of it is just, be honest with the people in charge, be honest with the medical professionals, be honest with the team about what you're feeling or what you're going through, and just be responsible. And that's really what most of this is about. And I know I wrote about it this week, and I termed it a kerfuffle because like you said, it's not quite a controversy, although it got a little bit controversial on Twitter because the words liability and waiver were tossed around. But yet nowhere in this 2-page document, this pledge, are the words liability or waiver.
I'm just going to read down the list of bullet points. It is my Buckeye Pledge to protect myself, my peers, and the Ohio State community by doing the following. Number 1, agree to testing for COVID-19 and potential subsequent self-quarantining if I am identified as a contact of anyone who has been determined to be positive for COVID-19. 2, if I test positive for COVID-19, I agree to self-quarantine in a designated location until my symptoms have resolved and it has been at least 10 days since the start of my symptoms and I have a negative COVID-19 test result. Number 3, timely report any known or potential exposures to COVID-19 to the athletic training staff. Number 4, monitor for the following symptoms: a fever of 100.4 or higher, respiratory symptoms such as a dry cough or shortness of breath, sore throat, headache, body aches, chills, loss of taste or smell. Please note that up-to-date symptoms can be found at, and there's a link to the Wexner Medical Center website. If I develop the above symptoms, to contact my athletic trainer and follow the medical staff's instructions, which may include being tested for COVID-19 and self-quarantining while the test results are pending, and or being evaluated by the athletic training staff. Stay at home if I'm feeling sick. Get a flu vaccination. Participate fully and honestly with the athletic training staff for contact tracing to determine whom I might have potentially exposed to COVID-19, wear a mask or the appropriate PPE in all public spaces, practice physical distancing as much as possible, frequently wash and or sanitize my hands, keep my personal space, shared common space, and my belongings clean. This seems very much like, yes, I am acknowledging that you have educated me on what I am supposed to be doing here, and I can't later say, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do this. That seems kind of like the central purpose of this document, right? There's not 17 pages of boilerplate legal language about how the Ohio State bears no responsibility to anything at any point, right?
Right. You don't need a lawyer to read this through with you. You don't need somebody sitting next to you as you read this. And I wouldn't, think back to my college days, I wouldn't need somebody sitting next to me to explain this to me, because it wouldn't be, for one, this is not the first time they're seeing this stuff because they've had to go through it and they've talked about it. There hasn't been much else to talk about over the last 2 months. So they are aware. And when we were there on last Monday, watching the players come in, maybe 3 of them didn't have masks out of the 80 or so. And, a couple times somebody would have to go back and get a mask, or a coach would get them a mask. So they're taking these things already seriously, and because they also take football seriously. That's why, maybe a dirty little secret, but that's why the football players that are at Ohio State, Tom, it's to play football.
Where are you getting this information? I mean, I'm gonna have to go Wikipedia citation needed on this. I don't know where you're coming up with that idea. Yeah, you have already seen some programs that have had issues where they didn't necessarily test kids when they first came back to campus, and then you have people who are positive and symptomatic and start spreading it to other people after they've already shown up back on campus again. Ohio State seems like they're being pretty proactive about this, and you kind of have to be. I mean, you can't just YOLO this kind of thing, because that's how everyone on the team gets it, and you then run the risk of exposing coaches, you run the risk of exposing, family members, roommates. They want to keep the people on the team, kind of in this bubble as much as they can, I think, throughout this whole process, and make sure that they are limiting any chance that anything comes in from outside. Some of these things, I think if you go around, wherever you live, there are probably a lot of people that are not taking this right now as seriously as Ohio State is. And the perception maybe that Ohio State's, maybe taking it more seriously than it needs to be taken, or, being overly cautious. But that is kind of the price that I think everyone in the program is willing to pay this year to have a football season.
Yeah. When we talked to Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis, they were both willing to do whatever it takes. They'll sign anything. They just want to play. And you see that with everybody in the building, including the cleaning staff, who are doing everything they can, wiping down everything, because they don't want to be the cause of something happening this season where you have to forfeit a game or something like that. Everybody is, they're all in on having a successful season, and a successful season would, at this point, being just having a season. And with the potential that this team has, obviously nobody wants to see that go to waste. But just the idea that the way Twitter exploded as it does with the national writers when this came out from the Dispatch about this liability waiver. And Tom, we've been signing waivers. Parents, kids, athletes have been signing waivers forever. Waivers for youth sports. And I wrote about this in my column on Monday, where you have to sign waivers to let your kids play sports. I included a waiver for youth football in the piece I wrote about, if you must acknowledge that football is dangerous and your kid may die, and through no fault of our own, or it could happen from somebody watching the game or somebody playing in the game, and you don't hold us responsible. These are waivers that are being signed for, 10-year-olds. And this is normal. And so when this pops up that isn't even a waiver, but is seen as a waiver, even if it was a waiver, I don't understand the big deal.
I think you're exactly right in that for my 7-year-old son to play Mini-Mites ice hockey last year, I had to sign an actual legal waiver that was all sorts of disclaiming liability for concussions and all sorts of stuff like that. The thing that Ohio State put out is not that. It is not written as a legal document. It is the last two paragraphs, which are where you would normally have the disclaimer of liability. I'm just going to read them verbatim. I understand COVID-19 is a highly contagious virus, and it is possible to develop and contract the COVID-19 disease even if I follow all of the safety precautions above and those recommended by the CDC, local health department, and others. I understand that although the university is following the coronavirus guidelines issued by the CDC and other experts to reduce the spread of infection, I can never be completely shielded from all risk of illness caused by COVID-19 or other infections. I have read, understand, and agree to comply with my Buckeye Pledge above. I also acknowledge that these expectations and pledge are a condition of my participation in Ohio State athletics, and that any failure to comply with my Buckeye Pledge above may lead to immediate removal of athletic participation privileges, not my athletic scholarship, and or the inability to use athletics facilities. I take my Buckeye Pledge seriously and will do my part to protect Buckeye Nation. And then student-athlete signs, and then the parent signs if they're under 18. There is nothing in there that says, if you get sick, you can't sue Ohio State, or if you get sick, you can't hold anyone else responsible. It is literally just, I understand this is what I'm supposed to do. This is basically like when I coached my son's hockey team, and I had to take concussion training, and I had to take recognizing the signs of abuse training and that kind of stuff. and you had to just sign documents that just basically said, yes, I understand everything that you have just told me, and I will, do my part to enforce those as best I can. That's it. That's all this is. It's not, that they bear no liability. This, kerfluffle might even be overselling this a little bit. Like, why is this a conversation? This is something that seems very much in line with what you would need to sign everywhere else. And this way you can sort of enforce the rules. This gives the rules some, internal enforcement mechanism where people can't say, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do this. Oh, I didn't realize I had to report a sore throat. If someone doesn't report it, then that's on them, and they can have repercussions. It's not that there's no liability in Ohio State. It's Ohio State wants to make sure everyone is following the rules exactly as written, because that's what's going to give them the best chance to play a season. And ultimately, that's in the best interest of everyone in that building and everyone in the athletic department.
And it was portrayed as this thing that everybody has to sign or else they can't play. And the thing is, well, yeah, it is something you have to sign or else you can't play, but you don't have to sign it. You don't have to do these things. You don't also have to play. If you're concerned about COVID-19, you don't have to play and you won't lose your scholarship. So at that point, what's the problem? When, you are allowed to sit the season out and you get to continue to have your schooling paid for, but the season is going to go on without you, that's on you now. If you don't want to assume the risk, that's fine. You don't have to. And there's the liability thing. When you want to study abroad at Ohio State and you're going to go study, I wrote about it in my piece, like if you want to go study bugs in Brazil, you're going to need to sign a liability waiver stating that, yes, I understand there's dangers here. And as I wrote, like if a jaguar wants you, that risk is there. So you're going there to study bugs, but be aware that there are things in the jungle that Ohio State can't protect you from, even though they're going to do their darndest. And this is, it's not quite a jungle out here, but you can only do so much to protect players. And they are doing a heck of a lot to try to keep the place as clean as possible. They're limiting the players. They're limiting the number of people in the building, staffers, interns. Like it's a skeleton crew. So they're doing their part to keep things as safe as possible. And so then to see Ohio State, and I'm not even defending Ohio State and what they're doing. I'm just trying to, defend reality or common sense. Like they're not squeezing the blood out of these players. They're trying to get them to hold up to their end of the bargain in terms of, hey, don't bring this in. Let's try to keep everything clean. Do your part. And if you don't, then we have to hold you responsible for that.
Right. And it's basically, this is one of the steps that they're taking. This is the education step that they're taking to keep players from contracting this, or to try and keep players from contracting this. But the biggest step they're taking is just how seriously they're taking it. I think if you're the only person in, say the grocery store wearing a mask, you're going to feel kind of weird being the only person in a grocery store wearing a mask. If everyone's wearing a mask and everyone seems to be taking it seriously, then that seems like that would make it more likely that you would take it seriously yourself. And Ohio State, by setting these rules out, enforcing them, and saying these are a condition of participation, that removes any question. Like, these are the rules, you can follow them or not, but if you don't follow them, you don't get to play this year. We're not going to take your scholarship, but you're not going to get to play this year. And that in and of itself, I think, is going to foster an atmosphere of compliance and an atmosphere of people doing what they've been asked to do and doing what they can to keep everyone safe, because, again, everyone wants to play football this year. This is just the price of admission this year in this kind of really unusual time. One more thing before I let you go. I don't think we've gotten any word on whether Ohio State players have tested positive or not yet, right? Ohio State hasn't released that. I'm not aware of that. Are you?
Correct. They have not. And I don't know that they will. As we know, Ryan Day is pretty secretive about injuries and stuff like that. And when talking to Jerry Emig, the SID, on last Monday, he pretty much said like it show up on the availability report as anything else, just available or unavailable. And I wouldn't expect them to get too much detail into who has tested positive or anything like that. It would have to come from the families, and they're probably being instructed to be as quiet about it as possible if somebody does test positive.
Yeah, so I don't anticipate that we're going to have a whole lot of insight. I mean, some places have just said 6 players tested positive or 4 people tested positive when they returned. But yeah, the last word that we had from Jerry Emig was basically they don't want to release that because then people may be able to sort of discern from that, these certain, 4 people tested positive and we haven't seen these 4 people going into the facility today, or, whatever the situation is, that people may be able to sort of discern from that who, private health information about the players. So yeah, I don't think we're going to get that, but, Ohio State certainly seems like they're going above and beyond to try and keep this from becoming an issue this year. So, Tony, thank you for joining us this morning. If you're interested in subscribing to the Morning Scoop or Buckeye Weekly, which is the other show that Tony and I do, or Gives in the Bank, or Vegas Knows, or Scoop World Order, any of the great podcasts on the Buckeye Scoop podcast network, you can do that on Apple Podcasts and any other major podcast platform of your choice. Just search Buckeye Scoop. I will tell you, just some free advice, I know what's coming on Scoop World Order with Kirk Barton. I just finished producing one of the shows he just recorded, and the first 4 people that he's hosting for interview guests on his show, the first one was Urban Meyer. That one's already dropped. The next 3, he said basically it's his living Ohio State Mount Rushmore, these 4 people. So the first one's Urban Meyer. There's 3 more coming. I got to tell you, I was real excited to listen to the interview he just did. That'll drop a little later on this week. But yeah, he's got some big stuff coming on. So you might want to check out the Scoop World Order podcast and all the other great podcasts from BuckeyeScoop.com. And of course, you can visit BuckeyeScoop.com as well to read Tony and all of our other great writers. And a lot of that content is free and in front of the paywall. And if you want the insider board and some of the other content, you can subscribe there as well. So, Tony, thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.